Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the RedactCast. Today, I have two good friends, KatiePeircee and Diana, or TVBearArt. And today, we're going to be discussing some stuff about psychology, which is totally a subject I know so much about, which means I will be at the forefront of all conversation here. Anyways.
Master of disaster.
Oh, 100%. So to start out, let's just have our guests introduce themselves. Katie, who are you? What do you do? And what's your connection with psychology?
So my name's Katie. I recently, as of the last 6 months, have been a streamer on Twitch. So that's kind of where all of this started for me. I graduated college and went into the field that, my degree was in, marketing. And along the way, I think during COVID and stuff like that, I kind of realized that psychology is something that I've been interested in a long time. And through, going through Twitch and talking to people and kind of creating this community, I've realized that it's an important factor, not just in, the pandemic and that sense of it, but just in a real sense in a lot of people's lives. And so for me, I actually am undergoing a career change currently from marketing to psychology. So I'm actually going back to school to pursue a master's in psychology. So that's where it kind of comes in my life. But aside from that, I also started this podcast called Messy Mental, where we take different topics pertaining to mental health, whether it's diagnoses or anything like that, like anxiety, depression, all of that stuff. And we just talk about it. We talk about what are the symptoms? How do we think about this? How is it diagnosed? And then we have someone who can share a real life experience and what that means to them. And then we just talk about support for that and how we can still connect and work through that together. And that's kind of been my goal with streaming, is to create a support group, if you will, of people that are able to talk about these things openly and be vulnerable and show people that it's okay. Because at the end of the day, it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to need someone to lean on, and it's okay to not need someone to lean on, but maybe have something you need to get off your chest or talk about. Because there's so many different degrees of psychology and ways of thinking about mental health. And I think, it's important to cover all of that. So it's something that I'm passionate about. It's something I'm working towards. But currently, yes, no credentials to my name, unfortunately. Just a passion for it.
Yeah, of course. All right. And Diana, who are you? What do you do? And how do you tie into psychology?
I appreciate you did that, because sometimes it's going to come out sounding
That's
like that.
Perfectly fine. I suck at talking too.
I have an associate in psychology and social and behavioral studies. I am currently working on my bachelor's in biopsychology, minoring in biology. If it were my choice, I'd only be trying to major in psychology, but I want to become a psychiatrist. So I am trying to focus on the biological factor so that I can get into med school. That is a very top goal. So a lot of the things that interest me about it is just the fact that we tend to not prioritize it in our society. It's just very shameful to talk about it. It's something that we see as a untouchable topic. And I think that's what a lot of us now in our generation are trying to rewrite. We're trying to say, hey, this is what we all suffer. This is what everyone struggles with. Let's bring awareness to it. Let's talk about it so we can do things to change it, so that we can have more support for people in it. The reason why I actually want to go into psychiatry versus psychology is that because of that toxic positivity that has been pushed into our society, we value medicine over talking. And that's a very big issue, is medication can only take you so far. It's supposed to supplement your progress. It's supposed to help you through what you're struggling with, but you're also supposed to get that out. You're also supposed to deal with the issue. And that's what therapy does. That's what psychology is meant for. It's supposed to say, hey, this is a problem. What can we do to fix that? What actually helps it? And there's a lot of findings, a lot of research that therapy actually helps. Talking about it helps. There's a significant positive reaction to talking about things and healing and getting better. And that's what I want to do with my doctorate degree when I get it, is, you know, be that person to say, yes, we're going to put you on this medication. You do need it right now, but we're going to work towards getting you off of it. We're going to work towards you getting better. That is our goal. It's not to keep you where you're at, not to keep you treading in the water, alive, floating. Mm-hmm. We want to keep you on a rift where you can float and swim where you need to. And if it sinks, we revisit and reevaluate and help you, you know. And that's what a lot of people want to shy away from, is the work of it. It is hard, it is dirty, but it's there.
Basically, you want to help with like actually furthering instead of just leaving people complacent, leaving them in like a like that state of like, no, I'm okay, don't worry about it.
Yes, it's basically a wake up, people. This isn't okay. This isn't life. Life isn't like this. Life is supposed to be better. You know, we're supposed to enjoy it, and it seems so inescapably impossible to do that, but it is. You just really have to focus your energy towards that.
100%.
Yeah. You touched on some awesome stuff there, and when I talk about like my podcast, the one thing I always say to everyone is like the hardest part of like dealing with mental health and like each individual's mental health journey is that it is a journey in a very real sense, and that every journey is different and every journey is unique. And so, you know, just because one pill worked for somebody and it was the best thing that ever happened to them and it fixed all of their issues doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. And like there's so many other holistic like ways to go about you know, ailing the symptoms of mental health disorders, because at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10 we can't cure these disorders. These aren't things like that we can just cure with a pill, right? So these are things that we manage. These are basically chronic illnesses a lot of the time, especially with anxiety and depression and stuff like that. So like for me personally, I struggle with generalized anxiety disorder. And so with that, there's so many different treatment like methods with meditation or EMDR or, you know, different anti-anxiety medications. But it's all about kind of taking that path and taking that journey to find out what works for you specifically. And just like anything, like, you know, with any illness, I think about even in the medical sense, there's so many different like medication pathways to go down. And I think it's really like commendable that you want to be that person that's like, I'm going to help you through this, because I know that a lot in the mental health community with psychiatry, you know, some psychiatrists are just, you know, prescribing them a pill and letting them walk out the door and figuring it out, right? So I think like holding that person's hand and talking with them and being open about it, making sure they're kind of like keeping a record of it and monitoring them is something that's definitely going to help with like, you know, over like drug abuse and overdoses and all of that stuff that can be prevalent to some of these medications, like without the proper monitoring, right? So I think that's super commendable, and I like that's incredible, because when you first said psychiatry, for me, I think it was like a negative thing, and I was like, oh no, like is she gonna be one of those people that's just like prescribing pills left and right? Like no, but it's good that you said that, and you want to like.
That's something that I want to talk about is also the negative stigma towards psychiatry and psychologists. Oh, they don't care about us. They're just getting paid. You know, they're only doing it for the money.
Right.
That is something that we in the medical industry have to change. Because if you look at it, you can see that everywhere, where you're in there for 1 minute with the doctor and they kick you out. You know, saying, this is what you're going to do. Come back in a month. We'll see what happens. And then that's it. You're left a month later still struggling with all the things that you have to deal with no real results, no real treatment, no real anything, homework for you to do to work on those things to help you. You know, and a lot of psychiatrists, unfortunately, they are bought into pharma. They're bought into the medical insurance of it, that they're getting paid to push medication. They're getting paid to put you on medication. You know, they make a lot more money doing that. They make a lot more money seeing you for 1 minute, having an appointment with the next person the next minute, versus taking the time to listen to you, to hear what's going on, to see how the medicine is really doing, to see what is actually stressing you out, to pinpoint issues. Because when we listen to people, we can hear so much. People actually say a lot, but we dismiss so much of what is said that we're just like, oh, well, we don't know what's going on, so who knows? We have to wait longer. And it's like people are constantly speaking up, but you have to really listen in order to figure it out. And that's an issue in the medical industry, is doctors don't want to listen. They assume that they know everything. And I don't agree with that. I agree that if you listen to the patient, you can heal them and treat them properly. They will be able to tell you what they need. Because like you said, it's person by person. Everyone is different. There is no rule of thumb. So for them to say, I'm going to sell you this one medication, no matter how you say it's affecting you, that's not okay. Yeah. So
I have a question about that. And this is more like economy/business question, more than just strict psychology. But like you're saying, there's the problem with a lot of this is that people are getting paid to push their medications, right? Do you think that stems from how expensive it is to become a psychiatrist and how much debt you are put into trying to get there and trying to dig your way out of it? Or do you think it's more stems from just basic like human greed?
Stems from a lot. So one thing that we don't understand is doctors are contracted with pharma, contracted with insurance. We have no choice but to work with them. Right? We have no choice but to abide by their laws, by what they say, what they push. If they, in your contract, say you are going to do this for me with these rules, you have to. Now, in order for it to make it beneficial for us, yes, we do need to push it as well. But what doctors are not getting is they can still take the time. Where they're being greedy is saying, I'm only going to give you 1 minute of my time before I see the next patient.
Kind of try to just get as many patients in and
yes,
I get it.
Yeah. You can take more than 1 minute with your patient to properly help them and figure out what medications to push on them. Because you can have a contract with more than one medication. It's just what is going to give you the best contract. Yeah. That's also where the grid comes from. I'm going to pair up with this pharmacy that sells these types of medicine because you're going to pay me more for it.
What were we trying to say, Katie?
I was just thinking about like the way that like psychologists and psychiatrists kind of interact. And this is a question that I had because I know that like personally, I've gone to therapists and counselors and psychologists that will refer to you to a psychiatrist if they think that you need a certain medication. Does that go both ways? So if you're a psychiatrist, can you refer someone to a counselor or a therapist to like get outward therapy? Like I know like okay, because I was going to say, like, it has to go both ways, too. But, like, are they missing the mark there? Are they just not referring people to
They're just not referring. They're not caring. They are just saying, this isn't my job. Right. If you are sent to me, you are most likely told you need therapy.
Right.
And they're saying, all my job is to give you medicine. Right. It's not. Your job is to make sure their mental health is okay. You are the doctor in that situation. You are a literal doctor. You are the one responsible for their mental health. Yeah, and if you are not outsourcing them to other information, you are cheating everyone and you are just pocketing everything. And that's what I'm saying where it comes down to time. Is that's where you take the time to say, have you thought about therapy? And that's something that I very much value is I am always going to work with patients who see therapists. I'm going to actually try to get my master's for an MFT because I also want to do therapy. So in some patients where they're just utterly uncomfortable with another therapist, because, you know, there's a stigma with that too. Oh, all therapists are weird. All therapists don't care. Okay, well, I care. You've been with me enough times to know that I care. Let's go do a therapy session then. You know, and doctors could do that. They could easily get a master's degree. It was a lot harder to get a doctorate. You know, it's just a matter of how much do I care about my job and how it affects people. And honestly, because of how hard the medical industry is and how much they don't care, they desensitize doctors. They come out really hard and like they know everything now because I went through all of this. So I have the respect to just, you know, this is what you're doing and that's it. See you next time.
Right. And that's important too. I think another kind of topic you brought up is like with therapy, I tell people all the time this as well, like just as much as like the treatment is specific, like finding a therapist is specific too. And you have to think about it. Like I tell people this and it's kind of funny, but it's like the way I look at finding a therapist is like dating. Like it really is, because at the end of the day, like you have to find somebody that works with you and is there to solve your issues. And there's a lot of resources out there like Psychology Today where you can look at, you know, your location and the problems that each therapist deals with and where they are and all that stuff and what insurance they take. But at the end of the day, you know, the way that, you know, some people come away from therapy thinking, oh, you know, this isn't for me. It's because the individual therapist is, you know, there's personality involved.
That person is not for you.
Right, exactly. And it's not that therapy isn't for you. It just might take going to a couple consultations to find the right person that's going to be able to address your issues in the way that works with your personality and who you are and your core values and all of that stuff. Like all of that has to be in line. And so there has to be that level of trust. And you know, as far as other things go, like maybe a physical doctor, maybe you don't have to have that trust, but you know, taking their advice is something that you do, you know, most of the time if you trust somebody. So finding that level of trust when it comes to mental health is, you know, that much harder because some people going into therapy have trust issues, have deeply rooted fears of, you know, abandonment and stuff like that. So it makes it 10 times harder to, you know, be vulnerable with a therapist, especially one that, you know, you might not click with right away. So that might draw some people away. And that's why I always say again, like, don't give up, like keep trying therapies, go to someone else, or even bring it up with your therapist, even say to them, I know this is weird. And for people that struggle with, you know, like social anxiety, it might be really, really tough, but say like, you know what, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. I don't think, you know, this is the right situation for me, but I really want to continue looking for a therapist that I click with. Do you have any recommendations for somebody that deals with anxiety or women's problems or, you know, whatever it is? And so they might have, you know, colleagues that they went to school with that are better suited to deal with some of the issues you bring up or whatever it is. But just don't, I think like people get this idea that the first therapist they go to is the one that's going to be able to heal everything about them and they're going to be fine. And that's 9 times out of 10, it's not like that. Yeah.
Yes, because another thing that people don't understand is, you know, we have all these wounds that we walk with day to day that we're not noticing. And it does really affect how we judge people, how we see people. And you can't expect that the first person that you meet that has therapist on their name, you're going to like. You know, that person is not going to trigger you, that person is not going to in some way make you feel uncomfortable. You know, and this is your mental health. If a doctor didn't make you feel comfortable, you know, when hearing about your symptoms and stuff like that, you'd go get a new doctor. People think, oh, this is a therapist, it's a one shot. You know, I'm only going to try it one time, see how it goes. Oh, it doesn't work. Right. So we have to differentiate what is you being too picky on saying, okay, no therapist is working for you. Okay, we have to look at that. Why is it not working for you? Is it because you haven't found the right person? Or is it because you're just not wanting the help? You're not wanting to start the process.
Right. And that's so important. I think about like addiction and stuff too. And that like is so specific to that specific scenario. Like addicts 9 times out of 10 will not accept treatment unless they are willing. It's on their terms to accept the treatment. And that goes for a lot of different mental diagnosis and stuff like that. It has to be on you. And a lot of times, again, when it comes to like physical illnesses and stuff like that, a lot of people are coming to terms with the idea that they have to advocate for their own health, right? Like you have to be the advocate of your own situation. You can go to a doctor, but a doctor is going to put their, you know, professional opinion on what they think. Yeah, right. So their own perspective. But sometimes it takes doing a lot of things, going to a therapist, going to your general practitioner, going wherever you need to go to get different opinions, and then be an advocate for your own mental health and say, you know what, I think this is what I need. I think this is what's going to work. You know, I've heard this from this person and, you know, I trust this person and I'll go through that path. But, you know, I think I'm leaning towards this way or whatever it is. But being that advocate, taking that ownership, it doesn't lessen because it's mental health rather than physical health. I think that advocacy for yourself still needs to be the case when you're, you know, in charge of your mental health. And you have the right to say no. You have the right to say, no, this isn't working. No, this is making me feel weird. Just because somebody is a professional doesn't mean they know what is specific to you and what's going to work for you. So just understanding you have the right to say no and try different things and, you know, see different suggestions. Like the one thing that I really like about the podcast that I do and like the community is that we talk about what works for us specifically, and that gives other people ideas of like, hey, maybe I'll try meditation and see how that works. And, you know, for some people, meditation can be chaotic because they can't focus or whatever it is, or a grounding technique of like, let's see how many colors are in this room, and bringing myself down from like a high anxiety situation or whatever it is. But giving other people tools that maybe a doctor hasn't already provided or whatever it is, I think we can get from this community aspect that might not be given in other places. So, and that's another thing about, our society today is we're so much more open about mental health. And, generations past, mental health was looked at as a weakness. You go to a therapist if you're having like a psychotic break, and that's it. If you went for whatever reason, you were weak. So I think breaking that through the generations is something that's really tough, especially in terms of toxic masculinity and how that's impacted, men's willingness to go get mental health help and advice and stuff like that. So we live in a society today where we're working on that, but we're also at a place now where it's not, fully accepted, but we're getting there. And I think doing stuff like this on this podcast really helps us get to a place where, we can advocate for people and say, this is something that you should take seriously and work towards if it's something that's affecting you, and just, take a moment to reflect on that and see if, you might need to go seek help or whatever it is. But it's more accepted, I think, today than it was. And it's always gonna, we're gonna work towards that. But at the end of the day, I think like we're in a better place now than we were. But
oh, definitely. And I think that in the future, we can hopefully normalize that you don't have to have significant trauma and abuse to go to therapy. Like, life itself is traumatic. Life itself is difficult. No one wants to talk about feelings. Right. You are always taught to be quiet, to not say that in public, to not talk about those things in social settings. We're supposed to present a perfect show, We're having a nice chat. You don't bring up things that are wrong with you. You talk about what's going well with you. And that's just difficult. And so we need to normalize that people need therapy just to learn the basic skills of understanding their emotions. A lot of people are going around not even knowing their own feelings, not even knowing their own emotions, not even knowing how to talk or communicate, because they were never taught how to communicate. Therapy is very important on just growing that, growing the basic skills of being able to communicate with another person.
Right. And the other part of that is like, how do you, practice something that you were never preached or taught, and it's like that whole aspect of, you might not know that you're exhibiting these unhealthy characteristics or cycles or whatever it is if you haven't ever been taught anything different. And that's where I think experience shows us. And experience is a great teacher of like, people don't do things this way, or, this isn't the norm of whatever, people react to things this way or react to things that way. Maybe I'm taking it a little bit differently than other people would or whatever. But how do you think, and this is kind of off topic of what I was just talking about, but in contrast to like us getting better, I think, about talking about mental health, how do you think social media has played a part in how people either present their mental health or compare themselves to others or anything like that? Because I know that there's been studies about social media and its impacts on mental health.
Yes, I'm very happy that you actually asked that question, because social media has actually created toxic positivity.
Very true.
And, it makes it harder for people with mental health because, yes, it's advocating for it. Yes, it's bringing awareness. So it's very good in that regard. But in the regard of Instagram, in the regard of TikTok now. So yes, we have the studies that Facebook, Instagram, Twitter is really good on getting awareness out there. But now we have to look at new findings regarding TikTok and those short videos. Those short videos, yes, sometimes they're full of information of how to actually help you out of it. But a lot of the times they've brought up toxic self-care, where they've now come up with two terms of what self-care means. There is boring self-care, where it's the things that you actually need to do to take care of yourself. Like drinking water, going on a walk, doing your homework, getting out of bed, brushing your teeth. And then there is glamorous self-care, where you are spending money on face creams, on salon days, on outings,
Right.
So There's just a give and take of what social media really does to mental health.
Right.
Hmm.
I think,
And then-
I mean, in the way that... Go ahead.
You sure?
Go for it.
Okay. So also from my point of view, obviously, like being not someone who's like put a lot of time into studying psychology, but looking at social media, there is definitely the ups and downs of social media. Like you were saying, awareness, all that stuff. There is a lot out there. It's a lot easier to find someone who is willing to talk and open up with their community or whoever follows them, and you see people being willing to share their feelings, being willing to share their problems, their experiences, their struggles. But on the other hand, a lot of people are using social media as a tool to kind of like lock themselves away and take away from one of the things I used to throughout computer science and my time studying business and all that. The people look at social media as reducing social interactions. Like it's supposed to be social and talking to people and getting to know people, but a lot of the time, besides now with COVID, where we're not really interacting with other people in real life anyways, but it was very much taking away from getting your mental health okay, like having a good mental health by talking with people and interacting with actual people, because you don't get that same connection through a screen as you do in person and seeing someone in real life and all that. And so I feel that like you were saying, there are ups and downs of social media, and I don't think there's any way to fix social media to be better, because no matter what, it's going to be an avenue that people can use and get addicted to and lower other healthy alternatives because of it.
But that's the thing that people need to understand is anything can become an addiction. Literally anything. You can become addicted to anything. Getting addicted to anything is unhealthy, whether it's exercising. You can get so heavily addicted to exercising, it's very bad for you. So just
Judge
being...
me.
Yes. Looking at you.
It's fun, okay?
We'll have your intervention later, not live, so...
I know, right?
But
Perfect.
yes, you can get addicted to anything, and so people just need to be aware of that. Is too much of something is bad for you, and that's just what it comes down to. Too much of something is bad for you.
Yeah, and that's so true. The only spin I would put on that with social media specifically is, it's funny. I've been noticing in like my little community or whatever that people have been coming to me a lot more saying, I'm going to take a detox from social media. It's just been ruining my mental health and I need to take 2 weeks from it. And I think what they're talking about more specifically, I think is, and for me, from the perspective of a woman, I think more specifically is this comparison that we have with, these ideals of perfection that people do post online. So we have these apps, we have these tools to edit our bodies, edit our face, edit whatever it is, edit out the imperfections, right? So we have this generation of young females growing up, and young males specifically too, because it's not just females who have to, see these things constantly. And we have this generation of people that are judging themselves by a standard that doesn't exist. It simply doesn't exist. And so what I think happens a lot of times is this creates a lot of insecurity and self-doubt and anxiety and depression, because when we're constantly comparing ourselves to things that don't exist, it's kind of hard to have that pressure and still go on with a healthy psyche and a healthy mental ecosystem. And I think people are taking this and taking it so seriously. And whether it's Instagram, and this is the one thing I think people talk about Instagram a lot, whether it's Instagram and people comparing their bodies, or Twitch, where people compare their numbers to other people. We seek this social validation, right? And I think it comes back to that of like, comparing how well you're validated to how well someone else is validated and deriving your worth from that. And I think that causes a lot of people to lose themselves in this idea that their worth is tied to a number, whether it's on the scale or whether it's on a social website or whatever it is. And I'm saying that, like, again, at the end of the day, yes, an addiction can be unhealthy no matter what it is. But is there an impact there where pulling up your phone every day and seeing images of things that are expected of you but aren't realistic is impacting mental health in such a detrimental way for not only like our generation, but the younger generations? Growing up, I would go,
Definitely.
yeah, like I would go play on the playground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Honestly, and like you were saying, it's not just from it's not just females, it's guys too. I have so many friends who are like on their phones taking selfies and then like modifying them for an hour to make sure they look perfect, to then put it on Snapchat for like, you know, the one day or however long. One of my friends, my workout buddy, he's a big dude. He's you know, he's a good looking dude. He's blonde haired, blue eyed, black dude, you know. So many people love him. And he like in his head, he's like, no, I'm ugly, no, I'm ugly. And works out non-stop to have like that built body that he sees online. And we're like, I'm constantly trying to tell him like, hey, yo, you know, you're good, you're fine, just chill kind of thing. And he just has that stuck in his head, and I'm sure it's mostly because it's just what he sees online, because he's always showing me like, yo, I need to get abs like this, yo, I need my arms to look like this, yo, I need my legs to look like this. And it's like, yeah, you know, you can have a goal, but there's a point where like because he's hit that goal before, he's hit like that lean look before, and it was like, no, it's not enough. Now I need to be able to lift 500 pounds. Now I need to be able to lift 700 pounds, all this stuff. And it as good as it is to want to better yourself, there's a level of, are you bettering yourself for you, or are you bettering yourself for other people or for the validation?
There's only a certain amount of things that you can change about yourself, honestly. Like, your body is made differently. Where my fat goes when I get fat is different where it's going to land on you. You know, it's different where it's going to land on you. You know, and that's where people don't understand. They're seeing these, you know, big-breasted, big butt, big thighs, big hips, when not everyone gets proportioned that way. Sometimes we get big breasts, no butt. Sometimes we get big butt, no breasts. You know, like, it's all on the biology of it, of where it wants to go. And no matter how much you exercise, it's not going to make it go where you want. You know, we have to be realistic about that. Our bodies have limits. There's only so much we can change about ourselves. You know, and realistically, we just have to grow to accept it. And yes, we can have goals of looking our best and stuff, but it has to be the best that you can be still within yourself.
Love thine self.
I agree. Yeah. The other thing I think about too with this is like, just, I mean, obviously like this has to do with like, we're talking about the physical and stuff like that, but I've also met like streamers who have to take breaks from streaming because of, you know, comparing the viewers and all that stuff. It all comes down to the same thing. It all comes down to the value and the worth that you're deriving from this, right? But like, in one, I guess if we're talking about the physical aspect of it, is there a correlation, I think, between like, you know, young women suffering more from eating disorders because of this expectation? Is this expectation causing more people to commit suicide or do these things that, you know, with the right mental health influence or advocation or whatever it is, kind of flipping the script? Is there like, I don't think there's anything we could do because this is such a prominent part of our society. And again, there are good things and bad things. And, you know, people choose to follow what they want. You can, every time you go on Instagram, you can choose to follow a mental health page or a fitness model, right? So it's up to the individual. But at the end of the day, is this something we're also kind of creating in a way where people are going down this rabbit hole of decreased mental health or, you know, these issues that are created by this social media aspect? Or is this something that would have been rampant in any way we look at it? I think about like TV and like books and stuff like that, like other media and forms of media in the past. And is this something that, you know, I think just social media is so big today, it impacts so many people that I'm like, is this, you know, almost like an epidemic? Like, is this something that like is becoming this monster? Or is this something that, you know, 10 years from now, we're going to be like, you know what, remember that? It wasn't even a big deal. But just like for me, seeing like girls on the beach that are like 8 years old, like taking selfies and stuff like that, like, it makes me think about like, I grew up in a world where I would go to the playground and like interact with my friends. And like, we weren't talking about like who is the skinniest or whatever it is. Like we were talking about like. We
do have to look at the difference in that is social media is new. Social media just started. We haven't really, when social media started, it was just to talk to friends, people we knew, only people we knew.
Yeah.
Now it's how many strangers can I get following me? Because I had Instagram before anyone knew about Instagram, what it was. And it was literally just for people who you knew. And you posted just random stuff. And now all of a sudden it's all these videos. It's for people who we don't know. There's live feeds to talk to, different kinds of people. You can sell things on it now. And we're not understanding that social media is growing. It's growing into all aspects of our lives. It's not just our personal life. It's literally how we represent ourselves professionally, how people are going to see us. We have now said, this is how we identify ourselves. Before, it was just word of mouth. It was how you treated people when you saw someone socially, when you went out. Now this is, what do you do at home? How are you still being productive? How are you working this into your career?
Right.
And I feel like too with that, it's obviously the bad side of everyone can know who you are by looking at your Instagram, looking at your Facebook, looking at your Twitter, seeing what you tweet, what you like, what you favorite, all that stuff. People get to see that now and get an idea of like, oh, I don't want to hire this person because of, they support this cause or whatever. But there's also the good side to that. A lot of people now can kind of get an insight on who they're talking to, because a lot of the time, people are putting on a face for the moment to be liked, to be respected, to get where they want to get. And once they blast it on social media and you find out, you're like, oh, I can look at this person the way they actually are. And then on top of that, I feel like too, like thinking back, because like you were saying, social media is new. Social media is just something that's coming up, and this is what our generation is dealing with, or the younger generation they're handling is social media. Whereas when we were younger and when our parents were younger, they had TV, radio, whatever. And I just remember as a kid though, I was still talking to friends like, yo, I saw this movie, the big action dude. Like it's still a stereotype that they push forward with all the movies, the big dude, big pecs, giant guns carrying around, whatever. And you're like, that's the cool thing. I want to be that. And it starts everywhere, I feel. I don't feel it's specifically social media that's furthering it.
No, I think
it's
the
all
difference
media that's
is that
pushing
you're getting overwhelmed with it.
Yeah,
you're getting
absolutely.
overwhelmed with multiple people doing great things while you're sitting at home on social media.
Exactly. It's why I can't watch Katie anymore, because she just has too many views.
Oh my god, no.
She's like at like 500 crazy. And I have like 2, and I'm like,
no.
Mute.
Honestly, if I'm being honest about that, I feel some guilt. Like I've seen people that I'm friends with that, like, they come to my streams and I would go to theirs, like they have like maybe less views or whatever, but they're getting so frustrated. And I think part of it, like, not in any like way to me, but like they're getting like, just, I think they're comparing themselves to whatever my progress is. And like, I'm very grateful to be where I am, and that's great. But like at the end of the day, it's like, that's why I think this is important, because if you're deriving your value like from looking at my stream and being like, why aren't I there? Where like I could do the same thing. I could sit here and watch someone with 200 viewers and be like, why aren't I there, right? But if you're doing that and that's causing you to like lose value of like who you are and feel negatively about yourself, then I think that you're looking at it not you specifically, Alex, but like you're looking at it the wrong way. And like that's where I'm like, you know what? Like,
well, it's a social thing that we have to combat, because if we listen to how people talk, we're always comparing ourselves to other people. Why aren't you more like this person? Why can't you be like this? Well, this person learns better than you, someone always does it better. And you're always having to compare yourself and strive yourself. Even when we basically have someone that we look up to, we compare ourselves to that person. That's what I want to be. So it's just, we have to get a healthy, constructive view of what we want to be and try to aspire to that and not let that pressure us down. And that's what our society basically says, is let yourself feel pressured down, so you're forced to do all these extreme things like plastic surgery, like going crazy on social media, going out all the time. Like, that is a financial distress.
Right.
That people suffer just to do that.
Right, exactly.
So it affects in every aspect of our life, and that's just something that we have to see, is as a society we need to change that. And it's just, we've been pushing that for generations and generations, that we're the ones who are finally waking up and saying, hey, this is too much. We now have social media. It is everywhere. It is too much now. This is an issue. We have to solve it. We have to look at it now. There's no way to keep ignoring it.
Yeah. And also, just to bring it back to the whole like Twitch thinking, and again, For me, I've definitely noticed in the past my numbers affect my mood after stream. During stream, I'm usually fine. I can have 5 views, chat with that one person in chat for 6 hours and be perfectly happy. But afterwards, I look back, I'm like, man, what could I have done that entire stream to raise those numbers? What am I always feel like I'm not doing enough, and I've recognized that's not healthy. I've been taking a step back and okay, what can I actually do? But what's overdoing it? Like when I started with 8-hour streams, I was like, this is what I have to do. This is how I need to grow. And then I did it for 2 weeks and I was like, this is really unhealthy. I don't like what this, I can see my numbers. They're going up a little bit, but I'm not happy. So I had to cut it back. I went down to 6.
Because we expect people to suffer.
Exactly.
How
100%.
We expect people to suffer for things.
Yeah, but the sad part is that people will suffer for things because they derive that much value from it, right? And and that's why it's so important. I was talking about this on my podcast. It's so important to have, other things that give you purpose and meaning. And I think the difference is a lot of people look at Twitch as I think people come to Twitch with this idea that I'm going to come on here and I'm going to stream a game and people are going to like me so much that I'm going to be so popular. I'm going to have all these viewers and I'm going to have all this money and it's going to be my new career. I can quit my job. It's going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. And that is the complete wrong way to look at Twitch. And I think the most successful people, I think look at it as an addition to their life, an addition of who they are, an extension of who they are almost. I come on Twitch and I stream, 3 hours here, 3 hours there, whatever it is, but Twitch isn't my whole life, And so I derive my meaning elsewhere. I derive my meaning from going back to school and becoming a therapist and helping people that way, or, singing or whatever it is, having these other hobbies. But when you're putting your whole purpose and your whole value on social media or Twitch or whatever it is, then that's always gonna devalue your value because there's always going to be someone better we're talking about, right? So it doesn't matter who you are.
Apply that to a lot of things. You cannot be one thing. You can't just be a mom. You can't just be a therapist. You can't just be a sister. You have to have multiple titles. You have to be you. You are not just one thing. You are made up of a lot of things. Exactly. And if you subject yourself to just being one thing, you're going to go ill. That thing is just going to suck you dry.
Exactly. This is why my titles took sociology once, That's my title today.
That's who you are.
That's who I am today. Because sociology and psychology are the exact same thing.
Sure.
But no, I totally agree with if you derive your sense of value from one thing, then if that thing goes awry or astray, then of course you're going to suffer from that and the effects of that mentally. But I want to go back to one thing you said, Alex, about this whole physique. And I think it's important to talk about because, yes, when we think about social media, we talk about the beauty standards for women a lot of the time. 100%. And you took it back to this place of when I was a kid, we talk about the movie, we talk about the Jack guy with all the weapons or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And I just did an episode recently on toxic masculinity. And this is something that we overlook a ton in our society. And just as much as there's this expectation on women for beauty and having the right proportions and, having the perfect face and all this stuff, there's always been this pressure on men to be buff, to be manly. And the worst thing, I think, of toxic masculinity is that men are supposed to be completely non-emotional. And if they are going to show an emotion, it should be anger, it should be toughness, it should be rage, it should be all of that. And I was talking to somebody who had grown up in a situation that there was gang violence and stuff like that. And they kind of had to be that way for a living, to survive. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it was eye-opening for me because when I was a kid, I remember my mom and dad being hey, if you get hurt, cry it out. It's okay. Think about it. If someone hurts you at school, if somebody calls you a name, whatever it is, you can come to us, we can talk about it and all that stuff. And I really had this trouble of understanding what it would be like if I didn't have that release. And I think a lot of people go through this, not just people that are suffering from toxic masculinity of not generally not explicitly being told you can't cry as a man or you can't express your emotions or whatever it is. Holding that in, holding any mental stress in or emotional stress is going to cause these outbursts, these breakouts at random times and stuff like that. And just understanding what that feels like internally is so tough, just in my experience personally. But my heart goes out to people that have to do that day after day after day. And I think it goes in hand with that social media facade. So I think it started as like men don't cry, but I think it's kind of evolved into like people don't mess up. And like that's what it is today. And it's just it's crazy because you have one side of the field saying, hey, people do mess up, and let's talk about that. Let's have a conversation about mental health and like what it looks like and, you know, the fallout of all of that. And then I think you have another side where it's like, no, this is what perfect looks like and everyone should be this way, right? So how do we navigate a world like that? Like how do we find ourselves in those two different kind of belief systems? I don't know. It's weird to think about.
Yeah, it's all just like, it's very rough, and it's hard to like have a correct line. Like you aren't gonna know what's gonna work until the damage is done, basically. And just to go back a little bit, this is a life story. When I was younger, I was very much the emotional kid. I would like, if I would fall, I would cry. If I got a scrape on my knee, I would cry. If you know, someone picked on me, I'd come home and cry. There were a few times in my life where like I got bullied, and I would eventually like I would push back, kind of thing. But it would take a lot. And then going through my life, that was just me. I was made fun of for it for a long time. I got to high school, I was still made fun of for it. I was on the basketball team, so you know, the entirety of, you know, freshman, junior, JV, and varsity, being a freshman, I was made fun of, picked on, all that stuff. And then I remember it was either my sophomore or my junior year. My two best friends, and I still love them to death. They were kind of, they would pick on me, but more like playfully kind of things. And basically there was a point where they just kept doing it, and I felt a change inside me. Like I almost broke, where I went from like super emotional to no emotions. And I would like hold everything in, you know, everything was very much just, I would try to let everything kind of slide off of me. I wouldn't care if I was made fun of, if I was pushed around. It was just, I was neutral. It was very numb on the inside. And then I've gotten to a point now where I can kind of recognize like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I need to do for me. But also I'm kind of happy that I have the ability to brush off the small things, because you shouldn't let the small things affect you, because there are always going to be more small things, and there are always bigger things that you should be focusing on instead. But you shouldn't shrug off everything. Everything will have an effect, but you have to decide what you're allowing to affect you. Basically.
There's a balance,
and that's right. And that's important, because I think when we talk about trauma and like it's crazy, because when we talk about trauma, and when trauma started coming up in mental health discussions and psychology and stuff like that, it was only associated with like veterans returning home from war, right? Like people who have seen the worst of the worst, like people getting murdered right in front of their face, like all of that stuff. And what we're learning over time is that like trauma is relative. And so maybe you haven't seen like the worst thing ever, or maybe, you know, you haven't seen what people might have seen back then or whatever it is, but maybe, you know, you were abused and neglected as a child, and that's had a very big impact on how you grew up to be an adult, and that residual trauma is still with you. So like I think I agree with you, like we shouldn't be able to, like we shouldn't take every small thing that comes up in our life and like internalize it and like make it this big breakdown moment. But I think acknowledging an emotion, or acknowledging a micro trauma when it happens, and being like, wow, you know what, this wasn't right, this hurt me, and you know, I need to feel this feeling, and then I need to move forward, right? I think having that ability is what differentiates a healthy way of acknowledging things and moving forward, and addressing things and feeling those emotions, versus just saying it doesn't matter, it's all good, don't care, I'm gonna just not even deal with it. And I think that's where people get stuck, is this idea of like, I'm numb to it, doesn't matter, I'm just going to move forward, I'm not going to deal with it. And then one day all of that comes to the surface, and you have this big reaction, right? And then people are like embarrassed that happened, and it's like, well, why did that happen? Because you weren't addressing things along the way. You weren't taking the time to make yourself mentally healthy and address, you know, in a healthy way, how to navigate that thing. So the things that bother us day to day, like, oh, my boss is doing this or whatever it is, like, yes, we can shrug those things off. It's a normal part of life. But you know, when someone says something to you that's like very, very like maybe emotionally or verbally abusive, in a sense or whatever it is, maybe, okay, it might be all right to say, you know what, that wasn't right. And like, that was kind of like a violation of my mental health. That's like a violation of me. And maybe I should, you know, acknowledge it and feel what I'm going to feel around it, but not let it like control my life. There's definitely a way to go about that.
We need to feel our feelings as they come. We can't be ashamed that we're sad. Like, it's gonna happen some points. Something is gonna trigger us. It's gonna bring up a negative feeling, a negative emotion, and we have to feel it. That doesn't mean that two emotions can exist. That doesn't mean that you have to be negative the entire day and be spoutful and being aggressive towards people. You know, you can be sad and you can still go about your day having a good day. You know, those are two different things.
Yeah.
You can be sad and have a good day. And another thing, I'm sorry, could you remind me what you talked about? Because it was a lot and I had a point to talk about, and it's just, I've been trying to keep up. But...
Which person?
I got you.
Okay, go ahead.
Just talking about toxic masculinity, talking about how people are keeping those emotions in, and then with Alex talking about his like little things, like, you know, shuffling them off, like whatever it is. But I think for me, it's more like, yes, we had these.
Okay, I remember. Okay, so it's about being.
It's clicked.
So it's about understanding that you need to be assertive. You can say no, and that's what we're taught. Like, it all ties back to suffering. We're expected to suffer for other people, and that's just not the case. Is you need to understand where your boundaries are, and you need to say when someone is trying to take advantage of a situation, or someone just simply wants you to go somewhere you don't want to go. Say no, like, I'm not comfortable going there, or I need this, and this to make me comfortable go there. And that's something that I've honestly had to learn. Like, it's something that I've struggled with my entire life, because I have endometriosis, so it's a chronic illness, and it requires you to just have a lot of limits. And so I also have social anxiety, and so I'm not comfortable when I go out. I'm very comfortable at home. It is so comfortable to be home. And so I have to be aware that that is something that I struggle with, that I still need to go out to be mentally healthy. I can't just stay home because I have a chronic illness. So I have to, you know, also understand, okay, I'm sometimes not comfortable going out. I need a friend to go with me. But I don't always feel well all the time, and the person might want to stay. So taking my own separate car, but going with a friend is a limit that I can do. That is respectful to me. That is me honoring myself, because I can leave at any point I'm not comfortable, whether it's pain or social anxiety. I have someone there who's going to support me. I have someone there who's going to make me feel comfortable. Yeah, I'm not tying someone to my boundaries. I'm not tying someone to my limits. I'm not saying you have to leave when I want to go. You know, and that's what we have to understand. Everyone's different, you know? So everyone just needs to know what is okay with me is not always okay with you, and I need to say no, and that's okay. Because, you know, people have said no to me about helping me, you know, and that sucks, because sometimes I need a lot of help being with a chronic illness, but that's also honoring them. You know, they're not always capable of helping me, and that's okay. You know, it sucks to hear it, but that's okay.
That definitely has to tie a lot in with boundaries. And I think having healthy boundaries, no matter what you suffer from, whether it's a chronic illness or a mental illness or whatever it is like so important. Because I think especially, and this is something I can talk to a little bit, like children of abuse or neglect and have childhood trauma, they grow up trying to be people pleasers. And so trying to get that acceptance and love that maybe they didn't get as a child, right? So saying no is a really big lesson for a lot of people. And
it's the most difficult thing in the world.
Oh my gosh, it can take so long for someone just to be able to say a 2-letter word. And it's the most liberating thing when you can do it, and you can say it in a respectful way and say, you know what, right now I don't have the capacity to do that, but I would love to help you out down the line, or whatever it is. I think that also ties in with stress. All of us have stress. All of us have limits. But when you're one of those people that are people pleasers and you're like, you know what, I've got to say yes to everything, or someone's going to hate me, or, you know, you have this fear of rejection or abandonment or whatever it is, I think that can be crippling to say no. And so finding the tools and the ways to say, no, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do this today, or, you know, ask me again tomorrow, or, you know, today's just I'm not really feeling great today. Can we postpone this, or whatever it is? I think having that is very liberating, and it can help us get a lot of our mental health back, a lot of that peace of mind that we might lose and get caught up in trying to please everybody at the same time, which can cause us to suffer. As much as, like saying yes to somebody and having that opportunity to do something right is great. If we're bombarding ourselves with all of those opportunities, we're going to be sinking in the end. And you really can't help somebody, again, if you can't help yourself, right? So I think it comes back to that whole idea of being able to have boundaries and being able to accept boundaries. A lot of people cannot accept no because they think it's a personal thing. They think if somebody says no to me, it's because they don't like me or they don't, whatever, they don't want to hang out with me, whatever it is. But you have to understand that people are all over the spectrum when it comes to their mental health. And just because somebody on the outside might look like they have it all together, or, that they're a mentally healthy person, or maybe even if they talk about mental health, I think a lot of people think that people who talk about mental health have it all together and never have a bad day in their life, which is so not true. But even if they talk about it, whatever it is, they might be having a bad day. And so maybe they don't have the capacity to help you, or maybe, they don't have the capacity to be helped that day. So I think just being aware of people's boundaries and acknowledging them in a healthy way is really beneficial in the long run for all of us. And learning those skills, learning those tools is something that's just going to make it easier on people that are suffering with different things, and make it easier on us to let people know what our needs are in a good way, and just say, you know what, today's not a great day. Maybe tomorrow, and that kind of thing. And I think people have this other thing of like being late or canceling and all that stuff. Like people are going to get so mad if you do that. But I think if you say it in the right way, you have the tools to do that, or you're proactive in it. It can be beneficial. But again, just learning those tools on how to say no and stuff like that is just what people need to learn. And
also, just some people don't make it easy to say no, and that's the other problem. Like I'm not going to say who on stream, obviously, but there's this person that I have in my life, a friend of mine, who is dealing with a lot of mental stress constantly. And there have been multiple nights where they'll send me a message at like 10 p.m. like, hey, can you hop in a call with me real quick? And I'm like, most of the time I'm up, I'm working on stream stuff, whatever. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll hop in a call. I'll talk with them. There have been a few times though, it's like, 11, 12, and I'm tired because I either streamed all day or I had, a workout or something. And I'm just like, I'm literally asleep. And they message me like, hey, can you hop in a call? And I'm asleep, so I don't message. And then they message me again and again and again. And eventually I wake up and I go, hey, I can't right now. I need to sleep. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm having a really bad time, all this stuff, and then I'll get messages from 4 other people going, hey, something's up. Hey, you need to talk to this person. Hey, what's up? And I'm like, I can't right now. I know emotionally I can't handle what you need. And so there have been times I'm like, dude, you need to go see a therapist. You need to go see someone who can professionally help you.
I'm going to say that we need to abdicate. Instead of enabling those behaviors, we need to say, you need more than what I can give you.
Exactly.
And that's not shameful. That's okay. You just need more than what I can give you. And you need professional help. You need someone who can be able to deal with all these triggers and stress. Because if you're coming to a friend with that much stress, and you need that much attention, you need someone who can properly guide you. And that's just what's unfortunate, is people think that their friends are their therapists. They're not.
100%.
Yes, they're supposed to support you. Yes, they're supposed to be there for you. But that is it. It's a support part of your mental health. The thing that holds you together is you actually advocating for yourself, for your mental health, having proper boundaries, going to therapy and having someone tell you, this is what you are lacking, this is what we can do to help you.
Exactly. And I mean, I've only taken sociology once, and I shouldn't be the go-to, probably.
No, we were talking about demographic situations.
Exactly.
Right. The thing that comes to my mind though with that, and I will say this because I've noticed a little bit about this. I think for people to go get help, it makes it real for them, and I think it kind of makes it more clinical for them. Like whatever they're dealing with, they might think like, like this is normal. Maybe they have a life where they have a parent that is an addict, or they have, there's sexual abuse in their life, whatever it is. And maybe they don't know who to turn to. Maybe they don't want to feel like they need to make it a clinical issue. They don't want to turn to someone yet. Maybe they don't trust a therapist, right? So maybe they're looking for that in between of like, I don't want to like cause this big ordeal. I don't want to, really get into the system. A lot of people say they're going to get into the system and like make it a very clinical thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe they just want to talk to a friend. But again, I think this comes into the same thing as creating those boundaries too. And it seems like what you're going through, Alex, is something I've experienced too a little bit recently.
Yeah.
And it made me think about myself a bit too. And I had someone that I was chatting with about mental health stuff, someone who's suffered from a lot of different things, and currently is going through a big battle of things in their life. And they reached out to me and they were like, hey, do you want to hop on a voice chat with me? I really want to talk to you. And this is someone that like is big in my community and all this stuff and that I trust, honestly. But I realized, and this is something I realized about myself in this situation, is like, as someone who suffers from like generalized anxiety disorder, like the symptoms for that are just like anxiety about work and like everyday things. And I realized that when it comes to like one-on-one phone call conversations with someone that I haven't met in real life, I have this anxiety around it. And I told that person, I said to them, I was like, look, I am glad to talk to you on, Discord or whatever it is, and like have our messages go back and forth and help you any way I possibly can. But I have to be honest with you, and this is my own shortcoming, that I have anxiety around being on a voice chat with you. I have anxiety around being on a phone call, just because I haven't met you and like all of this stuff. And, I want to be able to direct people where they need to go. But I also, if they have a fear of like talking to someone and bringing these problems up to someone who might, get the police involved or whatever it is on their specific situation, I want to be able to offer them some relief in the moment. But understanding that that's not going to help them in the long run is the difference. And so like, for me, what I want to do is to have, this is just like a personal goal of mine, is to have like a community of people. And like I do with Twitch, and that's great, but have a community of people where like people can go weekly or bi-weekly or whatever it is and just talk about what's on their mind, what they're going through, in just a safe space with people who are going to listen. And like, whether I can help them or someone else can help them, I think just having us all together is what's going to really like facilitate the help that they need. And so for these people that might not want to reach out to a psychologist or a therapist right at that moment, I think talking it out might get them to the point where they're like, okay, you know what? I have enough self-awareness now of what's going on with me and what's going on with my issues. And maybe it is time to talk to somebody. Maybe I can take that step. Maybe I feel confident now that I have a support group that I can go talk to someone confidently and tell them my issues, because I've done it here and I realize that they're not going to judge me and whatever it is. So like, I think providing that space is super important. And I know people look for that, especially in streams on Twitch. A lot of people come into my stream that I've never met before and are like, here are all my problems. And I'm like, that's great. Like, I would love to talk to you one-on-one and have a space where we can do that. But with Twitch, I mean, there's so much going on with like the game and the chat and all of that. That's why I want to create this space where everyone can just sit down and the focus is talking about what's going on. But again, I think when people are struggling through those extreme issues where there's domestic violence, sexual assault, abuse, all of that stuff, obviously the right move is to direct them to a therapist, direct them to somebody who can help them. Or in some cases, the police should probably get involved depending on the level of harm that's being done and danger involved and all of that stuff. But it's also important, I think, for people to have a space where they can go right before taking that next step, where they can address that with a group of people and then kind of go on from there and be like, okay, you're right. You know what? I need to go talk to someone. But that's basically what my plan is. Because I mean, obviously I'm not a therapist. I would love to be someday. That's my goal in going back to school, but I can't provide all the answers right now. And I always tell people, I'm not a therapist. Maybe someday I will be, but right now I'm not. So I can only help you to a certain extent. And I can sit here and listen and be an active listener. That's like the best thing that you can do for somebody, is just be an active listener. But I can't really give you any, medical advice or, clinical advice, anything of that degree. So creating those boundaries, even with people that are struggling, can be tough. And it can feel like you're doing something bad or you're doing something wrong because you can't help them in the moment. And as people, that's all we want to do is help each other. But I think creating those boundaries too, when it gets to that point of saying, you know what, I've helped you as much as I possibly can. And, I think what you're telling me is to this extent where maybe it might be a danger to you, or you might be a danger to yourself or somebody else. I think it might be like time to take that next step. And if you want, I can help you through that process. I can help you find a therapist. I can help you do this. I can help you do that. I can coach you through it. And for me, like, I'll always direct people to Psychology Today, where they can type in their location, they can type in their issues, they can find a therapist that accepts their insurance, all of that stuff, because it is a big process to find a therapist. You know, if they don't, like, there's a lot of factors that would turn someone away. If they don't accept their insurance and they have to pay out of pocket, or maybe they can't afford the copay, so they need a sliding scale solution. Like, there's so much to figure out. So guiding people through that too, and being an advocate for that is really important as well. But providing a place where people can come in the initial stages of just like wanting to unload their story and saying, look, I'm here for you and I can listen, is, I think, what a lot of people, maybe that's all they need. And that's, you know, where I want to kind of come in for now and be like, hey, and figure it out.
You brought up a really good point in passing that I'd like to talk about a little further. You know, people often, another perspective, I'm sorry.
No worries, you're good. Take your time, think your thought.
What I wanted to say was that people often can't pay for therapy. They think that it's very expensive, which it can be, depending on who you go to, what resources you have, who you have to actually direct you to it can depend whether or not you feel capable of doing it or not. Like, it can be very discouraging. And so it's our kind of, not our job, but it's very helpful if you have people, your friends, your family supporting you, helping you look for those things, you know, because if you have a lot of minds, and this is actually pretty cool, but our school is doing a study on that having two people on a topic ends up finding more results, you know, and that's just true. Two minds are greater than one. It kind of just proves that theory. And it can give people kind of the hope that they can get help, that they can have the possibility of financing this, you know, and schools do offer free therapy. And that's not something that people know. It's actually not something that's advertised, and it's pretty scary that it's not, because a lot of people in college do. They experience a lot of stressors, you know. School is a very, very big traumatic experience. And I think that's what people don't understand is trauma can be anything that really stresses you out. Something that you avoid, something that you just refuse to want to look at with the 10-foot pole. Like, it's just, it could be a car accident, it could be a divorce, it could be a loss, obviously, but it could be as little as finals. You know, finals can be a trauma. It just depends
finals
how your
not
body.
Little. I don't think anyone who's ever taken a final would go, a final is a little stressor.
Oh my
You
god!
know what I meant.
Yeah. Somebody in my chat today said I had a quick midterm to take, and I was like, "What's a quick midterm? I've only had long midterms."
My midterms always suck.
I know, right? They were like, it was 2 hours. I was like, that's not quick.
What's your long midterm then? That would have been my question. Just how long are your normal midterms?
Going along with like schools offering free therapy, if you are an adult and you are, you know, in a workplace, if you're in a corporate setting, a lot of times if you go to HR, they have like these, I don't know what they're called. It's like ERP or EARP or something like that. It's an employee like relief program. So they have therapists that also, you know, talk to you about like struggles you might be facing at work or stressors you might be facing at work and stuff like that. So taking advantage of that, knowing that there's resources out there, it's not blatantly said. And that's another thing about awareness is there's still this stigma, even though we've been trying to combat it, there's this stigma about mental health and mental health journeys and discovery and help and getting help for it. So trying to figure out, you know, if you can't afford a therapist, if you can't afford, you know, somebody who's gone to school, has a master's in it, and is, you know, doing their own private practice. If you belong to a school, if you're currently in school or you're currently in a corporate setting, you have a job in that kind of world, there are resources available to you. I would recommend going to HR or going to your guidance counselor or academic advisor, whatever it is, and talking to them about resources as well. But I think the other part of it, again, is people wanting to get help. I think also they have to be exposed to like experiences that are kind of in contrast to what they know. And like, I know for me, when I was a kid, growing up, like I wish I had somebody there that was advocating for me to be like, you know what, this isn't the normal way that people live. What you're living in is this kind of toxic environment. I wish someone was there to open my eyes, but again, I didn't have that. And so if I could provide a group, or anyone could provide a group where people are looking at that situation and saying, look, you shouldn't have to go through that. That is not what you deserve. You deserve so much more, all of this stuff. That might open someone's eyes to saying, you know what, maybe I should get help. Maybe I should talk to a therapist, because obviously this isn't normal. This isn't, you know, what's going on in everybody's day-to-day life, and the stress and anxiety that I'm dealing with day-to-day, I shouldn't have to deal with. And how do I manage that? And how do I, you know, continue to exist in this situation and feel comfortable and feel, you know, relaxed and all of that stuff. And so, again, I think what you were saying about two minds on a topic is better than one. If we can give them more experiences in the opposite of what they're experiencing, maybe that's enough for someone to say, okay, there's another option for me. There's hope for me. I don't have to live like this anymore. I don't have to stay stuck where I am. I don't have to stay frozen in my trauma, whatever it might be. And there's a path for me moving forward. And maybe I want to take steps towards that path. And maybe getting help isn't weak. Maybe that's what I need to fully realize that. But providing a space where people can understand that there's, you know, different ways and different like avenues for pursuing mental health and getting help around that is super important. And, you know, it also sucks because we don't think about other people's living conditions. And maybe somebody's coming home from school every day and they're getting bullied, and they're going home to their parents and they're saying, oh my God, this guy is treating me wrong. And he's doing this and he's doing that. And he's calling me names and I'm crying and it's horrible. And the parents are saying, shut up. You know, that's not okay. Toughen up. You're a man, whatever it is. But maybe he's got a group outside of his home and he goes to them and he chit chats with them and he's saying, this is what I experienced at school today. And it really made me feel down. And the people in that group are saying, it's okay to feel that way. What you've dealt with was a trauma. What you're dealing with is okay to be upset about. You're allowed to feel that way. And what happened to you today isn't normal. That isn't the way that life usually is. You know, that's a factor of life, but not every day is going to be like that. And, you know, getting over it and all that stuff. But I think that's a healthier way and a healthier ecosystem for someone to flourish in mentally than maybe the way they're living at home. And providing that for someone can help them take those tools and use them in a way to access health and access help. To get them on the right track and get them out of that system, hopefully entirely, if they're with the right therapist, right? But providing that space, I think, is really important.
Yeah. All right, so I have a slight change in big topic.
Okay.
I'd like both your opinions. So, as a guy in today's society, one of the big problems that I have, and a lot of people, or a lot of my friends who I know have as well, we try to be, you know, good people. We're very friendly, we're very open, we're very talkative, all this stuff. But always in the back of our minds, we have there's always that, you know, how we were saying like before, like we always think we're not good enough kind of thing, that kind of thinking. But for a lot of my friends, we have also the opinion of like, how is, if I'm trying to talk to a girl, how is she going to see me? Is she immediately going to think I'm a creep because I'm just saying hi kind of thing? Because that it's something that does happen in society. And my thing is there an equivalent for women? Where you also have that just opinion of like, okay, if I say the wrong words, are they then going to go and tell everybody that I'm a creep, that, you know, don't talk to me, I'm a perv, whatever? Because like even for example, when I was talking to you, Katie, about working out, I was very afraid to bring that up, because I was like, I know for a fact if I say this to the wrong person, they're gonna be like, oh, he's just trying to, you know, blah blah blah, whatever. And so that's always like a worry when I'm reaching out to people. And I was comfortable enough to like go, hey, if you need, you know, workout help, let me know. Right. But it's just that assumption that we're gonna receive kind of thing.
I find it hard.
Comment on that before I forget my thoughts.
Feel free.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. Sorry. So I feel like for women, it's a lot more socially expected that you are constantly thinking about what you say and do, because we have always been raised to think a certain way and to behave a certain way. We're always supposed to be polite. We're always supposed to be nice. We're always supposed to be in line and not talk out of turn. And that is kind of always in how we are day to day. I can imagine intensified when it comes to dating, because it's when should I talk? When is too much talking? You know, how much is too much emotion for this guy, you know? And also, we're supposed to be polite to men who aren't even polite to us. You know, when we're saying no's and asking for our boundaries to be respected, we have to do it politely, or we're called a bitch. We're called, you know, all these absurd things to justify that we acted out of turn, that we weren't supposed to say or do that. And it so quickly turns that way for females, where we're just told, oh, you're just on your period. How often have we heard that line? Everyone has heard that before, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's based off what we say and do in that moment. We have so many sarcastic remarks that we say towards women based on what they say to dismiss them, that it's just something that's wrong with them. So we very much do have to constantly be aware of what we're saying, whether we recognize it or not. It is an internal anxiety that we always have to deal with.
That's fair.
Right. I think, and it's crazy that you're bringing that up too, because I think from a woman's perspective, it's like, what will I say? What will I do? And will they like me? Will they like me because I'm this and because I'm that? And I think everybody has that to some extent. I think men face that too. But I think what you're touching on, Alex, too, is more about like, in the society we live in today, there's been a lot of scandal. There's been a lot of people that were canceled because of what they've done or haven't done, what they've said to a woman, how that was perceived, all of that stuff. And that can be really tough for a guy, especially a guy that's suffering from maybe social anxiety, or maybe it's just an awkward person and, you know, doesn't really have the nerve to go up to a girl and talk to them, right? So how do they navigate that when, I mean, regardless of that before, there's now this added stress of, if I say something the wrong way, they could interpret that as me being creepy or me, you know, trying to like get in their pants or do something. And it's got to be that much harder. And like, obviously I don't have that experience. I don't live as a male, but understanding that on the female side and trying to like, you know, make it easier for people that are coming up to you with like a genuine sentiment, like genuinely just trying to like get to know you or whatever it is, and identifying that rather than I think this also kind of again ties back to toxic masculinity. Like there's the guys that will go up to people and believe they have the right to do this and the right to do that. And there's such a fine line of like, yes, obviously, if you're with a girl and you're having a good conversation, ask her permission to, you know, touch her arm or whatever it is. And like, it might seem silly, but like, I think you'll get a lot more respect in return if you're more open about that and have that conversation with her than assuming that you're allowed to do that because of the like vibe she's giving off, right? So like,
and we have to understand that everyone has their own trauma. We don't know what a person has, so it's just respecting. They are a person and they might have different feelings about it.
And it's something I say too all the time about pretty much any topic. The extremists, the people who are doing the worst things, the ones who are doing the things that like, you know, are causing those problems are always the ones that are viewed in society, on social media, on TV. So the guys who are going out of their way to, you know, be just douches basically, those are the ones that are like kind of shown everywhere. And then every guy who's not trying to be a douche is like, well shit, if I do anything, am I gonna look like that? And it's funny. Oh, go ahead.
It's funny too, because there's that meme of like the guy just being like, hi, and the girl being like, I have a boyfriend. Like, it's like that. Exactly. Like, it's like, you don't know what's too far. And it's such a weird time to be a man in today's society, because I can't imagine dealing with that. Like, I can't imagine just saying hi to someone and have them like misconstruing that. And like, especially when it comes to, again, social media and intentions and stuff like that. Like, I see so many girls on this, like on the other side of the fence. I see so many girls saying like, yeah, he DM'd me, so like obviously he's into me. It's like, no, maybe he was just wondering how you made that cake that you posted. Like, you know, like whatever it is. But it's just like this assumption of like, how do we navigate that? And how do we do this in the right way? How do we facilitate that conversation, especially during COVID when it's not, you know, necessarily the right move to go out and interact with people physically? How do we start this conversation in a way that's not going to be perceived as creepy? And I think the way that you do that is to be completely and utterly genuine and say, look, like, I'm not trying to be a creep. I just really enjoy, like, you know, I don't know what it is, like talking with you, or, you know, some of the things you post like really relate to me or whatever. And, you know, I just wanted to say hi and like let you know that like I really appreciate you and you're awesome and whatever it is. But like, I think coming off and being like, yo, you are hot, like is not going to be the right way to like talk to somebody, right? Commenting on looks, talking about their, like the one thing that made me the most uncomfortable, I think, in my dating days was when people would come up to me and be like, yo, shawty, you so hot, you so fine. Like, I'm like, dude, I didn't ask you to comment on my appearance. And like, I think we get objectified as women based on what we wear and how we dress.
What people don't understand is that that's sexual harassment. It's unwanted attention. And people are so, like you said, terrified of being told that they're doing sexual harassment. But it's like, we can't be scared of the word sexual harassment. It's there. We just have to know the guidelines. Can you come up to a random girl and say hi? Yes. If she says no, like, go away, please, and is utterly defensive, that's unfortunate, but you have to respect that and walk away. And I think we have to look at the historical factor of this, is that when women went into the working industry, they were badly sexually harassed and mistreated and sometimes raped.
Yeah.
You know, like they were forced to do that. It was work and be sexually harassed or don't work. And then this is also during the time where we're trying to be independent, trying not to rely on a husband, because honestly, back then, if you got a husband, that doesn't mean that he's going to treat you right. You know, I'm sure a lot of us are all children of abuse because of how things were back then. It was okay to be abusive. It was okay to be sexually and physically and emotionally and verbally abusive to people, even in the work industry. And so women now, unfortunately, are so defensive and terrified of men.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we were raised that way, you know, cover up or your boss is going to take it as you want to have sex with him. And whether you consented or not, he would say, oh, that V-neck means we're going to have sex. Whether you want to or not. Show up the next day with a smile on your face and say nothing about it. And so women were just taught the rape culture. They were taught, you will get raped in the middle of the night. You will get raped at work if you are not careful.
Yeah.
From a parking lot, from a walk, anything. And so us as women are so defensive that when we see a guy coming up to us that we don't know, we say, I have a boyfriend. You know, because that's the only way that men understand. It's unfortunate. Why do we have to say I have a boyfriend versus no? Why isn't no enough?
Exactly.
And we have to look at that too, is that men don't respect it unless another guy is there. You know,
unless there's another threat.
Sexually harassed and physically touched in front of other guy friends. And unfortunately, they didn't see nor do anything about it, but... you know, they don't respond to no, and that's why women are so defensive. So we just have to be aware that people have baggage. You know, unfortunately, most women that we encounter have been sexually harassed, whether it's catcalling, whether it's being touched, whether it's more severe than that. Women have that built into them, unfortunately, because of our society. So you guys as men just have to be cautious that we are just super aware of that, because we have been taught socially to be terrified of that situation, that it's very realistic and can't happen to us.
It's funny too, like, I'm not saying it's the same in any regard, but I'm mixed. I'm half white, half black. My dad is black. And something I was always told growing up was like, you cannot be outside at night because you will get shot. You know, whatever. Even though I, like, in my head, I'm like, I'll be fine. You know, there's no problem. We live in a safe neighborhood. My dad had that mentality of, you will get hurt if you are outside at night. And, you know, even like with my friends, we make the joke, but it is an actual thing. Like when we're all hanging out, because both my friends, they're black as well, except they're dark skinned. And my friend literally has me sit in the passenger seat because we are less likely to get pulled over. We're less likely to be like stopped because I'm there and I look white. And so like all these things, it's very much like you're taught to try to be as safe as possible, even though like obviously we still have police brutality. We still have, you know, women getting raped. We still have a lot of problems throughout the society. they aren't as prevalent as they used to be, but they're still there, and the generations are still teaching them very much the stay perfectly safe kind of culture.
Yeah.
And that the mentality is always there.
And that makes sense. I mean, there's gonna be some fear there still on behalf of women and everything, because it is something not only we've experienced. I mean, you could talk to anyone of my friends and me, and we've all been, harassed in some way. It's just normalized in our society. But we can talk. There's gonna be fear there, not only with experience, but also with what we see in the media and what we're hearing in the news and all of that stuff. So of course we're going to be a little bit off guard when a man approaches us. We're taught that there's some fear there. And what I would recommend to men, and this is actually something that I recommend to a lot of people that are like girl dads, because for some reason I have a lot of girl dads in my community, and they taught me this more than anything. They said what I teach my daughter is, and when I want to compliment my daughter, I compliment her intelligence. I compliment her ability to be kind. I compliment her artistic ability, like all of that stuff. Anything that doesn't focus on the external, I think you're going to get a better reaction from a woman if you say, you know what, whatever she's doing online, like that you think is cool. Like, I really think that thing you did was really cool. And like, I would love to talk more about that, whatever it is. And I think, you're a really nice person. I think you're very intelligent in whatever it is. But I think if you're commenting more on who she is and her personality, rather than hey, maybe
that's creepy in that way. Yes,
right.
Then
I think they'll be more inclined to like learn more about you and want to know what you're about, because you're commenting on something that is different than what she's constantly getting every day.
Yes, and allows her to think about it and actually think how she wants to respond versus starting off defensive, and start off like, oh, okay, how do I want to deal with this?
Right, you're telling her that I value you for more than your body, which is not what she's getting every day. I guarantee you, any woman you're talking to probably has an inbox full of dudes that are just like, yo, shawty, you hot. Like, so if you're gonna be the one person that doesn't comment on that first, and you're like, look, I think you have a really nice smile or something like that. Take it away from like the sexualized features. If anything, if you still want to talk about her beauty, take it away from the sexualized features. Don't talk about, her figure or, whatever it is. Say like, hey, I think you have a really pretty smile, and I just wanted you to know that because it brightened my day. Whatever it is. Like, I don't know. But making it less sexualized is gonna probably get you a foot in the door with women as far as like making them feel comfortable around you and saying, okay, this is someone that maybe I can trust a little bit more than, someone who might be a threat to me because they're already just looking at me sexually. Exactly. And that's the biggest problem, is we are constantly fed, these sexualized things about ourselves.
We're always taught that men are looking at us sexually. Like,
right.
Even as a young girl, I was told that I can't wear a tank top near my stepbrother, and it's just like, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
If our family, why, when I'm at home, can't I be comfortable?
Right.
Oh, because your body's growing. Okay, right. Well,
it shouldn't be your responsibility to make him feel comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it should be his. And that's what the other part of it is like, we have normalized this idea that men are just animals and that they have no self-control. Like, I remember in college, which I graduated in 2017. So like in college, we weren't allowed to wear tank tops to the gym or leggings because it was too distracting to the men. It's like, why can't men who have a problem with girls wearing tank tops just go to a different gym? Like, if my shoulders are really distracting you that much, like, why are you even out in the world? People wear tank tops every day. Like, it's just, oh my God. It's this whole idea that women need to make the changes to make men feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think what you're presenting, if you say something that's not sexualized to a woman, is I'm looking at you more than just a sexual object. And I want to have an intellectual conversation with you because I value you as a human, not as a sex object. So I think that's the differentiator there. But yeah, it's crazy that our world kind of works that way of like, women have to change so that men can do what men want to do. It's like, that should be
we're also meant to do everything. Women have to take care of the house. Women have to take care of the kids. How often are men asked, who's taking care of your kid? How are your kids doing educationally? How are your kids doing physically? Those are all questions that get directed to the mom.
And that's, I know that in some ways that's changing. Like, I know as a society we're recognizing like paternal leave and like having the man be there when their children are born and stay-at-home dads and stuff like that.
That should just be a thing, because why are we expecting women who just had a physical trauma to take care of the house and a newborn child? Like, they literally just got stitched up down there. That's literally what happens. They get stitched up. You are still healing. Your body's not in the right place.
Yeah, right. It's interesting too, because when we think about the psychology around this too, like the way that we perceive the husband figure or like the man of the house, it has to change. I mean, a lot of people grew up without a father, and they grew up even with a father that wasn't present emotionally. And so how do we fix that wound? How do we teach men, okay, this is what your father did, and maybe this is what you know, but moving forward, how are we going to teach you healthy skills to be there for your wife and be emotionally present for your children and ask those questions to your kids? How do they learn something like that? Again, like when they have never been provided that from their initial relationships with their parents, right? So I think that's another part of mental health that is a big factor, is this masculinity thing of like if my dad wasn't there, if my dad wasn't present, and I never got the tools of a healthy male figure in my life, how do I provide that? I have to want that change. I have to, do the personal growth and work to get to that place where I can be that person for someone else.
Yes, and we have to continue to grow the redefinition of what a man is.
Yes,
if you're a man, it's not being an alpha male. You do not know how many times I get hit on saying, oh, I'm the alpha male, all this stuff. And it's like, that doesn't mean anything. And if we really want to go down and into it, being an alpha male in terms of wolves, they take care of the pack.
Yeah.
They make sure that the vulnerable ones are safe.
Right.
They make sure that they get to the destination, that every single one of them is taken care of, and that they are the strong support. And that's what men are supposed to be, is they are supposed to be there to help and support the wife and the child. Emotionally, it's not just money wise, it's emotionally and physically. When your wife can't do it, you do it. You guys are a team. You guys are one. It literally, when you are married, you are one person working together on your new life.
Right.
And that's the same thing that the wife has to do. She has to support you and do what you can't do.
Right.
Like, you can be vulnerable. You can need extra help to where your wife has to take charge and control of things. But it's a give and take.
Yeah. And that's obviously like the ideal healthy relationship, and being able to have that give and take and stuff too. But I think it's also like just trying to navigate. Like I know men that have not been able to even express their emotions until they met their girlfriend or wife or whatever it is. And so navigating that and giving them that safe space of like, listen, I'm not going to judge you if you cry. Like maybe your parents did, maybe your friends did even, maybe you've never been able to talk about emotional things with your friends because, with this gang mentality and like this pack mentality that men tend to have and everyone in the social group does, maybe you weren't able to talk to people because they would have judged you, right? So I'm here. And women, I mean, I'm not trying to talk about gender roles or anything like that, but for what I found, a lot of women that I'm friends with and stuff like that I know in my life, and this is different for every woman, but we're great listeners. A lot of us are emotional beings, and we drive our meaning and our connection from those emotional situations and being able to help someone through their emotions and processing those and stuff like that. And I think there's this big discrepancy of like what men think women want and what women actually want. And I think that stems a lot from like men think that they want these 6-pack abs and like this ripped dude that can like hold her at night and protect her from a burglar. And it's like, sure, that's one aspect of it. But like, no, at the end of the day, I want someone I can communicate with. I can come home at the end of the day and say, oh my God, my boss is being a complete asshole. I need to like relax and unwind. And someone say, it's okay, honey, I'm here for you. And let's talk about it, and so that's the big difference. And that's why I think men are like really getting frustrated, is like, there's this mentality and this idea that like women want this big figure, this man that doesn't show any emotions, just hard and like freaking cares for them in a protector way. And it's like, yes, we want you to be our protector, but I think in an emotional sense. Yes. Yeah, not the physical side.
Women want to be loved. Yeah. And we need emotion to be loved properly. We need to be understood emotionally to be loved.
Right.
And we actually look at this how do you say it? Biblical? Yes, biblical. Biblically. There we go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Biblically?
Anyways, yes, that's the
Biblically?
word I'm trying to say.
That's a word?
Okay.
It is a
Yes.
word.
I learned something new today.
So it actually says that women were meant to be loved in that regard. We see love in the emotional regard. That is what we undividedly need from our husbands, is to be taken care of emotionally, to make sure that we are feeling loved. If we do not feel loved, we perish and the relationship perishes. Whereas men need to be respected. And unfortunately, society has said they're going to be respected by being masculine. And it's like, okay, how are you defining masculine? That's the toxic masculinity. Masculine is being able to emotionally support and be there for your person, which is what, you know, unfortunately, toxic masculinity says you take care of your person by slaying down dragons. Well, our dragons are emotional, okay? They're emotional.
Right. Oh, such a good analogy there. I love that. I absolutely love that.
So what you're saying is I don't need all the swords.
Not unless you're gonna physically stab her, which I don't suggest.
Okay, no stabbing here.
Oh my god.
But one of the things I wanted to comment on was the thing you were saying about like the pack mentality. Like I was saying, my group of friends, my two friends who literally, we would hang out. They would come, like one of my friends, the friend who could drive first, he would come pick me up at like 10 p.m. We'd go get the other dude at like 10:10. We would be out until 4 in the morning. That was our group regularly. And about 2 years ago, I was talking with one of my friends and we were just having a conversation. I was telling him like, hey, yo, you know, like all the stuff's going on at home. It's really rough. So-and-so happened. I'm having like these mental problems. I'm going to see a therapist about this, blah, blah, blah. And then a couple months later, he comes to me, like, because I was just sharing all my baggage with him constantly, because we would talk constantly. And then one day he came up to me, he was like, hey, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, what's up? He goes, so you share a lot with me, you know, you're very open with me. And I don't feel like I'm very open to anybody, especially like, you know, my friends. I'm like, okay. And he goes, dude, school's kicking my ass. I've almost like gotten dropped from my school because I'm failing so hard, all this stuff. I can't tell anybody. And I'm like, you can, as you can see, like you can talk to me about whatever. And he was just like, I never knew I had, or people talked about this. I didn't know I could talk about this with people. I thought this was something I was supposed to deal with. And it tripped me up that my friend was telling me this just because I was willing to be open with him. And I feel like that's a lot of groups, both male and female. If you're not putting in an atmosphere of like being open, you're not going to get open back, and everyone's going to feel closed off.
And that's the thing that people don't understand. As a parent, you have to teach your child to communicate. That is a learned thing. You have to learn how to communicate. If you put a child in a closet, which has happened, they're not going to learn how to communicate. They can never learn how to communicate in that deep sense regard. Whereas now when we're talking in an emotional regard, is people are utterly baffled and do not have it. It takes years to grow it. Like I've had situations where I've had to literally teach my friends how to be able to communicate emotionally, how to have an emotional conversation. And it just really, one of the situations was a relationship. It really just frustrated me how much they could not comprehend talking emotionally. Like they just couldn't. And I was just really not able to understand why it was so difficult until I furthered my knowledge. And for men, it is difficult. Their brains are structured differently to where it is already very difficult for them to differentiate the different types of ranges of emotions. They think that there is just happy and mad. They have to learn that there is happy, mad, sad. Then they have to learn there is excited, happy, mad, sad,
There's just
angry,
that whole
upset.
range.
Yes, there's a range of emotions that you can feel, and you can feel more than one at the same time. They don't get that. They think you only have one off and on switch that goes back and forth. And it's so devastating to see how many people live like that. But you do have to learn it from scratch, and you need someone who's going to be very patient with you and understanding that you do need to learn how to differentiate your emotions, and that you don't know how to communicate that way.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to help you kind of identify what it is you are feeling and help you understand how to understand the difference between them. And unfortunately, some people try to put their own feelings on it, like, oh, you must be feeling this is how I would feel. It's like, no, you have to be not biased, because you don't want to put your feelings onto them and misconstruct them and manipulate them and turn into a toxic relationship.
Right.
You want it to be healthy, where it's like, okay, these are all the things, what do you think you are feeling, and go from there.
And that's difficult. I think identifying what the core emotion is difficult for a lot of guys. And one of the things that I realized, it's actually funny, like me and my boyfriend go to couples counseling, because obviously counseling is the greatest. And we've both been through our own individual trauma.
That's what you do for your relationship.
Absolutely, especially in this day and age. Like, I feel like everyone should be going to couples counseling. But
no, I feel like if you are in a relationship, you should go into couples counseling, because it just helps. Like, it helps de-escalate so many things. And honestly, why not? Like, if it's gonna make things better, why not?
Right. The thing though that I had to understand, and this is again like how women are taught emotions is like so different. It's like, yes, there's all these emotions, and it's okay to feel what you feel, but I feel like for men, like getting to the root emotion is really, really tough. And like there's been times where I think because my boyfriend and I, when we've been fighting or whatever it is, I've been he'll get upset, he'll get angry, he'll get like really mad, and I'm like sad that we're fighting, and I'm anxious, and I've got all these different emotions. And like I think when we were in this counseling session, and our therapist like saw this come to life, he got my boyfriend, and he was like, okay, you're angry, but what else are you? Like, can you tell me what other emotions you are? And it took him a while, and like he really had to dig, but what the core emotion was fear that he wasn't performing as a good boyfriend, that the relationship was going to end, that all of this stuff was going to happen. But the only emotion that he was socialized to express was anger, right? So uncovering that emotion is such a big step, but it's so important, because at the end of the day, I, as a female, like I can relate to fear. I have anxiety disorder. Like I can freaking relate to fear. So if you come to me and you tell me, look, I'm afraid of how we're arguing right now. I feel like I'm going to lose you. I don't want to lose you. I feel like I'm not doing a good job as your boyfriend, and I'm not doing a good job as a man, whatever it is. I can relate to that, and I can have a conversation with you about that. If you're yelling at me for no reason about random stuff, listen, we're going to be disconnected for a while because we're on different pages, So like getting to the root is so important. The other thing I will say is that this was an experience for me as well, understanding men and stuff, is that it really broke my heart. Like it really tore me apart when my boyfriend told me, he was like, look, I know we're going to therapy, and it took a lot to get him to go to therapy. No man wants to go to therapy. No man wants to admit that there's an issue, that there's something wrong, that they're not perfect, That's the expectation, that everyone's perfect and all men have it all together. We've got it going on. We can take care of somebody. Everything's good mentally. No reason to doubt that, right? So humbling himself to go to therapy was a big ordeal. But before that, talking to him about stuff in his life. He had been through many traumas, and talking to him about different things. I asked him, I was like, well, why didn't you ever tell your friends about that? And he was like, I did tell my friends about that. And I was like, well, why are you still dealing with some of this? Were you able to process it with your friends? And he was like, no, because every time I would go to my friends, they would say, dude, that's not what we talk about. We don't talk about that here. We're men. Get over it, dude. Stop being a pussy. Don't do that. This isn't the place. We don't talk about that here. We talk about sports.
Yeah,
man.
and that's what I wanted to mention, is that men are only taught anger. They're taught to suck it up and to be angry about it, and you take your anger out in a violent way. And that's why we have so many domestic violence, so many violent incidents from men. When you see a dude angry about him getting cheated on, you see him go out to a shooting range to blow off some steam. You see him going to football and being super aggressive to other people to where he's breaking someone's nose, and we think that that's okay. He just blew off his steam and now he's okay because he broke someone's nose. And it's no. Yeah. There are more to it that you need to learn. And unfortunately, because their brains are structured that way, it's incredibly hard for them unless they're told there are more emotions, they're not going to get it. Yeah. And society keeps feeding that you can only be angry or fine.
Yeah.
Right. But the other thing to note with that, and this is something I tell people all the time, again, is like, be the guy, and this is like, again, with the pack mentality, like, everyone wants to do what the other dudes are doing because men are very competitive. Men want to be better than their friends, and like they want to compete. They want to have like a little game going, right? So like if somebody in the group is like, yo, my life is terrible and I'm having a bad day. If one person in the group is like, shut up, dude, that's weird. Everyone else in their group is going to be like, yeah, dude, that's weird. What are you doing? So to be that one guy that's like, look, dude, it's okay. That's going to make everyone in the group judge you, right? So there's this fear of being the person that's like, I don't agree with this. I think there's a different way and I want to help this person, right? There's so much stigma about that because in that moment, this man is afraid that he's going to be cast out of that group if he disagrees with them, right? That's that pack mentality of like, I'm with the group or I'm out of the group. And if the person who's coming to the group saying, I have these issues, when nobody does that and everyone is like, don't talk about that. If there's another person that maybe is like, you know what, I've felt that way too. And I think we should talk about this and I would love to help you. Like, and he's going to get kicked out of the group, right? And everyone wants to belong. Everyone wants to belong to a group. And so that's what it is at the end of the day. And I tell people it's going to be hard, but people need, the way we're going to change this, the way we're going to break out of these stigmas, break out of this toxic masculinity is if you're that person that can provide that experience for someone to say, no, this isn't the only way to think about that. These people are wrong. This is the right way. I will help you. I will tell you about my experience. I will share with you. I will cry with you. I will be here with you. Like that is the way. And to be that person for someone, a lot of times takes so much strength that it's unbearable. And people it's the easy way out is just to say, you know what, dude, F you. Like that's not what we do here. So it's crazy that, I've seen a lot of times like guys being like, yeah, my first girlfriend was the first time I ever was able to express my emotions without being judged. And that's awesome that they found that in, their person. But at the end of the day, like we need to provide other situations for men to be able to express those things to other men and understand that it's okay, that other men are dealing with the same issues. Just because they don't talk about it doesn't mean that they're not dealing with those issues. And we need to have more awareness around that and support around that and people speaking out about that and being vulnerable and saying, look, I might come off as this big, strong man, but I've got my demons too, and I'm here for you. And I'm not going to put on this facade anymore because it's detrimental and it's only going to be more toxic as we go on in time. And I want to help people. And that's the hardest thing you can do. But you don't understand how many people you're helping if you do that, if you choose to do that. So that's the only thing I always say to people is be a true friend. Like being a fake friend and being like, yo, dude, let's go skateboard. But then like if they get hurt and they're crying, you're like, dude, get up, you're a pussy. Everyone can be that person. It's not hard, right? It's not hard to be that person. What is hard is to get down with that person when they're down and say, look, I'm here for you, man. And I know this is weird because we're men and we're strong and we're like, not supposed to be emotional, but like, I want you to know that I'm here. And like, it doesn't always have to be that way. And then that person, when something happens in their life, when someone comes to them, they can do the same thing. And it creates this chain reaction of people being human and showing their humanness to other people and taking that toxicity out of the equation. And that's just so important.
It is very important because that's actually going to affect a lot. Like if we can actually make that happen, that's going to change the social expectation that women are supposed to fix men. Like we're always expected as a wife to be a mother at the same time and teach them things that they were never taught just to get the partner that we want and need. And so that would eliminate that situation. That would eliminate a lot of domestic abuse because men would understand you have emotions. You can talk about it with other men. You don't have to put this facade and pretend to be this type of person. And it also targets people from saying, hey, that's not okay. That's not okay acting like that. That's not okay behaving so erratically, so aggressively. Men behave like that all the time in public and we just say, oh, he just needs to cool off. But that's not appropriate. Right. Yeah, that means 100%. That something is wrong. We shouldn't be expected.
It's like a cry for help.
Yes. Yes.
Sure.
All right. So I have one last topic before we wrap up. And this is a question I've been waiting to ask since last time we did this. So my last guest, fantastic dude, His goal currently is he's studying psychology to become a VR therapist. So what VR therapy is, at least in his eyes and how he's interpreting it, is it's a way of like exposure therapy. Basically, his example was people who are afraid of the water and just being in water or underwater, like putting their head underwater. He goes, what you can do with VR is simulate an environment where obviously you are not actually near water in any regard, and you are being slowly lowered into water, and you get to find your limit. Where are you comfortable with being lowered into water? And one he suggested for me is because I personally have a huge phobia, apparently, of these frogs in Dark Souls, and I hate them with a passion. And so something about them, like, it triggers me. And he goes, all right, so like for you, what we would do is we would simulate this environment, you know, maybe make it tiny first. Very small. Be like, can you handle that? And if I'm like, yeah, you go, all right, let's start scaling it up, you know, change the eyes, change the color, change, like, see what part is affecting you, and then you can address that. So my question to you guys is, what do you think about that and that whole situation? And like, how can it be implemented? Should it be implemented? Or is it like something like we shouldn't be mixing tech and psychology? We'll start with you, Katie.
That's a good question. I don't know personally. I haven't studied this a lot. Like, I haven't looked into this. The one thing I will talk about, like, that I have looked into is like gaming and like mental health gaming. So like, they have games that create like calming atmospheres and stuff that help with like, you know, anxiety and stuff like that. And those are really helpful for me just personally. But when it comes to VR, I haven't done a lot of VR in my personal life. So I don't have the experience there. But the first question I raise is, how closely to the real situation can we make it? And for me, like, that would be like 4D, like feeling the feelings around us. Because when we talk about mental health, we talk about the way that we process things. There's this really great book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And he talks about that with trauma and stuff like that. The way that we kind of process things is through the brain, the mind, and the body, right? So you've got the brain, the actual brain, the organ, and how it, like, the synapses work and all that stuff. Then the mind, that's our thoughts, right? And our feelings. And then the experiences that our body goes through. And so for me, it would be like, if, you know, my phobia was water and a fear of the ocean, and I have this VR of me like going into the ocean and stuff like that, I would also need to have like the sensation of getting wet, I think, and like getting my feet dipped in there, because that's going to add another element of how my brain and my thoughts are going to be around that. So I think it's a great step at, like, you know, exposing people to the sights and the sounds of what that feels like.
Interject with that.
Go ahead.
Because that would eventually be a goal. Just having experience with the topic, particularly about how therapy would work and how exposure therapy would work. Especially if it's to that extreme to where they need exposure therapy, you are not going to want to implement the water. I think that it's a very brilliant idea to use VR for it, but it's also very terrifying for the patient, because you are now simulating a real life event of what they are terrified of. So you want to be sure not to introduce these things too soon. So just the visual aspect of itself is going to be overwhelming at first. And so we want to make sure that we are doing as real as we can, but as slowly as possible, because that could honestly make it horrible for VR to be used for exposure therapy in that case. Because for myself, I have PTSD, so I get exposure therapy from physical touch. And my therapist is not allowed to touch me at all during my exposure therapy in order to make me feel safe. And the way that I get physical touch is from a scarf just being on me, because that is where I am uncomfortable, is my neck area. So she cannot at all touch me at all. So people who are terrified of being grabbed, of an aggressor, if you touch them while they're in their safe space, it is going to be so traumatic. So if you have them in a place that they cannot see and you put water on them, that's going to be very triggering. So it has to be very specific how you're introducing the water.
Right. So it would be part of the therapy to introduce that in time. So I think the good first step is to have the VR simulation, right? So I think as an avenue,
about is starting very small, you know?
Yeah.
Can you take looking at the water on the beach?
Right. Absolutely.
Can you slowly walk closer to it? Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a great first step. And I think that will probably work for a lot of people, especially just introducing them to the ideas of what their phobias are and just like facing the images and stuff associated with it. And like one thing that I know like that worked for me with certain traumas and stuff like that is EMDR therapy. And that's like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that has to do with how the brain reprocesses the way that we think and feel around these traumas and around different feelings and emotions and sights and stuff like that. And I know my therapist talked about, there was someone who had a phobia of going over a bridge, and through like 8 sessions of EMDR, they were able to just go over it with no problem. So like we have to incorporate, and I think this goes back to what you're saying of like, we have to incorporate a positive feeling along with that so that there is a mitigation and a reprocessing of, seeing this fear and being afraid, but also feeling comfort. So fostering that safe space as well in the same facility of like, okay, we're going to look
rewiring your brain to not take it as threatening.
Right. So we're looking at the scary image, but we're here and we're fine. And you can take the VR like goggles off and lenses off and be in a safe space, right? 100%. So I think that's a great thing. I didn't even think about it that way. So that's really good. Yeah.
And from a game programmer, game design side of things, the way he was explaining it to me, because we've both gone through like Unity training and stuff like that, where we've built games. And so the way he's explaining it is he wants to basically provide a facility, not just like, hey, here's a VR app that you can use to diagnose yourself, but he wants to wants to have a facility where you can come in and put the VR goggles on, and then from a computer we can control the environment. We can control exactly how everything looks and feels. We can make and also having a VR headset, I have like experience with VR. It feels very real when you're inside VR. Like you there have been so many times I will play, I'll take the goggles off, I'm turned around next to my wall, like just like face inside my wall almost. I've like accidentally hit the wall while swinging swords.
Messes with your senses.
Yeah, you are 100% immersed with VR. And so he's saying we can create these environments, very realistic environments, and then scale things, change things. He was saying for fears of heights, he goes, are you afraid of stairs? Because I'm also afraid of heights. He goes, are you afraid of stairs? I go, no, I'm not afraid of stairs. He goes, how many stairs do you think you could jump down without being scared? I was like, probably like 5. And he goes, okay, what if we had a 6th stair? What if we had a 7th stair? And we can scale that environment until you no longer feel comfortable, and we found your limit. And then from there you can provide a whole section of therapy because we know exactly your limit versus just I'm afraid of heights. We know how high.
Right.
And it's also not about, well, I should rephrase that. It's also about knowing your limits in regard of how much you can be pushed, because sometimes you're going to stay at that 7th stair for like 2 months. Sometimes you just need to stay there, and you have to be your own advocate, and your therapist has to not push you from that 7th stair. We just have to keep telling your brain this is okay. We have to just keep working on that you are safe. You are in a safe environment. Nothing is going to happen being here. Like, it's just okay. And until your brain can say that the 7th stair is okay, you cannot add anything else.
But not even just that, because it also, with VR, you can be a lot more specific. You don't have to do a full stair. If they're afraid of that 7th stair, what if you give them 6.01 stairs? 6.0, and you just do the smallest scaling to where your brain doesn't even realize that scaling's happening. And then, you scale over the course of half an hour, and half an hour in, you go, hey, just so you know, you're at 7 stairs now.
Right.
And you're like, oh shit, I thought we were still at 6, and we've just, the slow changes. And I was like, VR can do that in a way nothing else can.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, and like when
that
I
is
say
a little bit tricky ethically.
Well, yeah, obviously.
I'm sure they'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have to go in also knowing that, hey, we will be adjusting this environment. It is to help you, but you need to know you're not going to feel comfortable the whole time. When you're feeling uncomfortable, we're going to make you feel comfortable, but there are going to be uncomfortable moments.
Yeah,
and that's what we're working past.
Very important to disclose is that exposure therapy is literally nothing but being purely uncomfortable. Like, it's literally your worst nightmare. You're literally working on your worst nightmare. And so just establishing that trust and relationship with your therapist is important, of what you can expect in exposure therapy, especially with how realistic this is. I feel like the list is going to be really long on the consent form, just because people aren't going to understand how realistic it is.
Yeah, right. VR has made me cry. I've cried in VR because I was playing a game and it told me to jump off a building, and I looked down and you could just see I'm like, I'm not jumping.
Right.
I'm not jumping. And then like I turned, or like I leaned forward again to like see. The game thought I walked forward, took me off the building and started bringing me down, and I panicked.
Oh my god, no.
So like I was obviously, I know I'm on my floor, I'm not falling, but you get that visual like and then you hear the sound of the wind wishing past you. It could fuck you up.
It tricks your brain. Yeah, for sure. That's true. It
didn't even walk into the dark hallway. Oh my god, I'm terrified of dark hallways. I just couldn't.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that makes sense.
But and then one of the things that my brain just broke. I had a thing to add and then just turned off.
That's okay. God, the only thing that I would be
keep talking. Give me a second.
That's okay. The only thing I would be concerned of with that is like, you know, the not lack of control, but like when I think of EMDR and what EMDR is really like getting people to recall that trauma and feel that trauma on their own, and like create the situations we would create with VR in their own minds about how they felt whatever trauma occurred that caused them to be, you know, afraid of bridges, afraid of heights, whatever it is, and imagine that in their head, and then also creating that sense of, so it's all mental. And so getting the body involved with EMDR and being like, okay, like basically what it is like my therapist would sit down and be like, hey, put yourself in a situation where you were, you know, a kid and this is what was going on, and feel that in your body. And like I would take myself back there mentally to that trauma, and you have this body response when you've been traumatized or whatever it is, and you can feel it. Like you start reacting the way you would if you were in that moment. Your brain and your amygdala starts firing off like flight or fight and all that stuff, and you know your chest is, you know, tight and your head hurts and all that stuff. And then you know, you'd hold that in one hand, and whatever that sensation was, you would keep it in that hand. And then in the next hand, he would be like, all right, well, we're going to take you to a safe spot. We're going to take you to a beach with your friends or whatever it is. And so alternating between that eventually causes this desensitization and reprocessing of the trauma, so that when I think about that thing, whatever that thing was, I don't react the same way physically to it that I would before. And so my whole question about the VR stuff is, how much control are we giving to the patient to alter that if it's too much on the spot, so that they can rationalize it, or are we giving that to the person administering the VR? And if they are having a reaction that's too much, obviously they can turn it off. But having that control, I think, in your own, within yourself with EMDR is an advantage, I think, over something like a VR treatment there, because it's like, and then creating that sense of safety is up to the therapist, right? And that might look different for everyone. So like, that's the only concern I have. But again, I'm not a therapist. I don't know what this is all about. But the only reason that like EMDR works and the therapist doesn't even have to be involved half the time is because it has to do with the way that you process things mentally and the images you create that are specific to you mentally around these traumas and around these things. So like, can we create a situation that's so specific to an individual through a VR lens? Whether it's like, I'm sure like if it's like, you know, they have a trauma with the lake down the street that, you know, that's in their home, like we could take those pictures from Google Image and put it in their thing or whatever it is. I'm sure we could get to a specific level there. But like, I think when it comes to these images and stuff that are created internally, we can't always replicate that just to the extent that maybe someone else could, because we have our own imagination, we have our own thoughts, stuff like that. But I don't know. And that's something that would have to be discovered through this stuff and through this process and through this training. But I think it's a cool idea. I would love to see how it all plays out again, ethically and like just in the realm of like success.
And before I pitch it to you, Diana, just as a point, there currently with my VR headset at least, all I have to do is double click a button and the game stops and it shows me outside.
Okay.
through like, because the VR has cameras all over to monitor where you are positioned in the room. So I click 2 buttons and it shows me everything, and I can look around my room. I can see everything. I can see where I am. So there's a way to quickly get out of a thing if you're not feeling comfortable. But I knew you had something to say, Diana, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'm writing it down so I don't forget, because...
If you feel free. That's why I tried to go quick.
Okay, so...
Also, sorry for running over. Katie, if you need a dip, feel free to let me know. We'll cut it as soon as you need.
No, it's okay.
Same with you, Diana, if anyone needs to
Yeah,
dip.
after I'm done with this thought, I am going to head out.
Okay, sounds
But
good.
this is something very important that I did want to say. You can kind of have that argument with the therapy that you were talking about, because your mind is so trained to those traumas that you look for those traumas in anything. That's why we get triggered so easily in our day-to-day life, is we go looking for those things, and we are specifically hyperly sensitive to those things. So that's why VR would work terrifyingly well. Because no matter what, our brain is going to put us back into that situation. If we are being triggered with that, even if we're walking and we see and hear a loud triggering noise that associates to a trauma that we had, we're right back in that place of the trauma. And so no matter what, it's going to be the same situation. So even if you do VR exposure therapy by yourself, like you said, you could do the other one by yourself. It's the same thing. You could easily put yourself in the same situation and work on it by yourself. But no matter the case in therapy, it is always down to the therapist to make sure that you are comfortable, to make sure that you feel safe and establish a safe environment. And you yourself have to make sure that you say something when you do not feel that way, so it can be addressed.
Right.
Because with exposure therapy, it's going to make it more threatening for people. That's just where I feel that it would be more terrifying for people, but it is going to benefit them because their brains are literally being tricked into thinking that this is reality.
Right.
And so our brains are just very easily manipulated. Like, I am working with a cognitive psychologist professor under his research, and a lot of his work is just saying how the brain and our vision can easily be manipulated so quickly. Like, that's why we have all those illusions, and our brain sees it as factual. Because our brain is always going to try to relate it to something that we know, to something that is real. It's not going to want to see nonsense. And it's going to make it very real to us. And so that is the unfortunate of ourselves, where therapy is so difficult and it's inside our bodies, and no matter what, we're going to feel that way unless we train ourselves not to. But it would be really good to actually do that. It's just scary. I myself would not.
Yeah.
All right, so in that case, we'll wrap here. We'll give both people some time to give some closing remarks real quick. Katie, is there anything you'd like to leave off on? Anything you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to plug before we head out?
Plug? I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I think what this world needs a lot more of is empathy. And so, like, just some of the things we talked about today, just like being a friend and, like, you know, breaking that stigma of, you know, maybe the group saying one thing but do the other. You know, be that person that is able to reach out to your friends and say, hey, you know, I've noticed this about you, and I'm just curious about it. Tell me more about, you know, how you're feeling right now, or how this made you feel, or whatever. Like, just be that person that's able to reach out to somebody and be an active listener. I would say is the next most important thing, is be an active listener and be empathetic if you possibly can. I know, you know, with some mental disorders, there's like lack of empathy and stuff like that. But if you have it within you, if you're able to be empathetic, if you're able to be an active listener, it's really, really important. You know, that's what I try to facilitate in, you know, my podcast, Messy Mental, but also like in my community with Twitch. So, you know, if you're ever having anything wrong, anything that's, you know, getting you down, whatever it is, feel free to stop in, tell me what's up, talk for a little bit. Maybe I can help you again. You know, maybe I can be that step for you between being completely isolated and talking to a clinical, you know, psychologist or a therapist or whatever it is. Again, like, that's my dream, is to be that. So I'll take any practice I can possibly get. If anyone's out there and needs anyone to talk to, feel free to DM me on Twitch or Discord or whatever it is, I will. Oh, there you go. Epic already put my link out there. So there's my channel if you feel like sending me a whisper or whatever it is. But I'm always available to chat. Again, I probably won't be able to solve all of your problems, but hopefully I can quell some of the pain of living in today's world. So, absolutely, that's pretty much it. But also, thank you, Epic, and well, I call you Alex, but Epic, for having us here today. And it was an honor to be here and just talk about, what little information I can give and experience that I have with it. And it was awesome getting to meet you, Diana, as somebody who's actively pursuing this and trying to make a change in the world. Honestly, I feel like I learned so much from you too. So thank you both for being awesome.
All right. Diana, any closing remarks? Anything you'd like to say? Anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, just know your boundaries, know your limits. It's okay to say no. It's okay to take time to yourself. You can't have a relationship without boundaries. It's not going to be healthy. It's not going to be beneficial to you. No one wins. It's always going to cost you emotionally and mentally. So just do yourself a favor, love yourself a little more, say no a little more, and be your own advocate, because at the end of the day, you're the one that you are left with. So love your own body. And it was nice meeting you guys too. Thank you.
And any plugs? Instagrams? Social media? I don't know. Is there anything you want to know?
Just have my art Instagram, and that's it.
What's your art Instagram?
It's lunasamantha.art.
lunasamantha.art Insta. There you go. No, enter. There we go. Cool. Well, thank you both for joining me. This was a fantastic time. I always love doing these with everybody because I always get to talk with cool people about cool things. We'll be back in 2 weeks to talk with 2 hip-hop professors who both study Black culture. So it's going to be fantastic. Also, thank you, John. You've followed at the right time where I can actually say it. So thank you for the follow. But we'll be back in 2 weeks for that. Also, this VOD will be on YouTube next Sunday. They all go up there. I have a whole playlist with everything so far. We have 3 episodes so far. It's fantastic. And eventually we'll get the podcast on other platforms. But until then, thank you all for watching. Thank you both for joining me. And we will see you guys next time. Peace.